I had never made silver jewelry before, but with the help of this, I created this. I've always loved the idea of nature captured in precious metal, little leaves frozen in time. And I thought, what if my doll and I could wear matching silver pieces like we belong to the same world? I'm always up for a challenge, and even though working with a completely new material wasn't easy at first, I was so excited to try it. I wasn't able to find silver clay in Lithuania, so I had to order it online, which shows how new and uncommon this material still is. But once it's fired, it becomes 99.99% pure silver. The science behind it is kind of genius. Nano-silver particles are suspended in a cellulose-based binder, which turns it into a pliable clay. When the binder burns away during the firing, the silver particles fuse into a solid piece of pure silver. That means you can make real silver jewelry even without traditional silversmithing skills. Perfect for beginners or anyone trying metal jewelry for the first time, aka me. So my idea was to create two matching pieces of tiny branches with a few dangling leaves that would be different in texture, shape, and size. I went to the park hunting for the tiny leaves and branches for this project, as I knew I couldn't sculpt something as good as nature already created. When I had my perfect specimens, I made two silicone molds and tried to press the silver clay into it to form these intricate shapes and textures. Unfortunately, I was very wrong to believe that it will work as any other air-dry clay, and my first few attempts wasn't very good. I think the silicone was too soft to transfer all the tiny details into the silver clay, and the shapes came out uneven and mushy. That's when I realized I need help with this. Since I had never worked with silver clay before, I knew I needed some guidance. So I took 2 craftsy classes to learn the basics and get comfortable with this new material. And I'm so excited to say that Craftsy is the sponsor of today's video. Craftsy is an online learning platform for all things creative. They offer over 2,000 classes with step-by-step instructions in over 20 categories. Things like painting, sewing, knitting, drawing, or even cooking and cake decorating. The silver clay classes I took were incredibly useful. They gave me a solid foundation and helped me to avoid some very real beginner mistakes. And I'm not stopping there. Next, I'll dive into their sewing and pattern alteration classes, because when I make doll costumes, adapting patterns to fit my dolls is always a challenge. So I'm hoping those lessons will make the process a lot smoother. If you want to try it yourself, go to go.craftsy.com/newfidolls and get the first full year of Craftsy Premium for only $1.49. This offer is for new members only, and it's a perfect chance to learn something new or level up the skill you already have. The link is posted in the description of this video as well. Thank you, Craftsy, for sponsoring this video. After watching the courses, I realized there was a much better way to approach this. They suggested turning the same silver clay into a paste by mixing it with a little water. Then, using a small brush, I could paint that paste directly into the silicone mold. It needed multiple layers to slowly build up enough thickness for the piece to hold its shape, but the moment I tried it, I could already tell it was working so much better. Suddenly, every tiny vein and texture from the original leaf appeared perfectly on the clay surface. The difference was incredible. Instead of mushy, distorted shapes, I finally had sharp, crisp details just the way I imagined them. And honestly, I was thrilled. It finally felt like the vision in my head was becoming real. Once the pieces were completely dry, it was time to refine them. I carefully sanded away any imperfections, and yes, I saved every single bit of dust. Silver clay is precious, and all of those tiny particles can be recycled back into paste or pliable clay later, so nothing goes to waste. But sanding at this stage is nerve-wracking. The clay may look solid, but before firing, it's incredibly fragile. It actually reminded me a lot of porcelain in its greenware state. One wrong move and the whole thing could snap. So I took my time, gently smoothing the edges and getting each leaf just right. Then, with a deep breath, I drilled tiny holes so these leaves could eventually become miniature pendants. Every step felt like holding my breath, but seeing these pieces transform from soft clay into a future piece of jewelry was so satisfying. Now that I've tried it, I can see how these branches could have been even more delicate and lightweight. But since this was my first time working with silver clay, I wasn't sure how thin I could go and how these pieces would respond to the firing. So there's definitely room for improvement, and honestly, that's quite exciting. Because now I'm already imagining what else I could make for my dolls with this material. There's so much creative potential here. Silver headpieces, jewelry, maybe even metal shoes. This feels like the beginning of a whole new chapter in my doll accessories, and I can't wait to explore it more. Silver clay can be fired in two different ways, either in a kiln or using a simple handheld torch. And I decided to try both. One of the teachers in the class said something that stuck with me. If you can make creme brulee, you can make silver jewelry. And honestly, that's so true. The torch is incredibly simple to use. I even bought mine from a regular household store, nothing fancy or expensive, which means you don't need a professional studio setup to get started. But since I already have a kiln in my studio, I was curious to compare. The kiln is definitely more convenient because you can just set the temperature, close the lid, and forget about it until it's done. It also holds heat very evenly, so you know your pieces are firing consistently from all sides. That said, I had great success with the torch too. For smaller or simpler designs, the torch works great. Maybe for more intricate or structural pieces, I would rely on a kiln a bit more, but it's really empowering to know you have options no matter your setup. When the pieces come out of the kiln, they don't look shiny at all. They are this soft gray color, almost like stone, because the surface crystallizes during the firing. But then you start polishing and the silver begins to reveal itself. I used my trusty Dremel tool, some metal files, and a polishing paste. It's such a satisfying moment watching those silver highlights appear and the texture becoming smooth and shiny. And wow, silver clay is strong. I went hard when polishing and not one of them bent or snapped. I've heard that if you fire it incorrectly, it can break, but these were rock solid. Knowing that, I'm already planning to push my limits with my next designs to create really fine details, delicate lines, maybe even some filigree-inspired shapes. Now that I know the material better, I can dream a little bigger. Obviously, the most exciting part was to assemble everything. I attached the leaves one by one, and once I added the silver chain, this little experiment suddenly transformed into something I would proudly wear. I know there's so much room to grow and refine my techniques, but seeing a finished piece for the first time made all the trial and error so worth it.
Sweet, dare to honestly see living at ease, not ego and greed. Is it worth feeling right over a piece we're upside down?
It still blows my mind that you can take this soft clay, fire it, and end up with fine silver jewelry, and all that with such a simple setup. And that officially wraps up my very first adventure with silver clay. I'm so proud of how these pieces came out, and I can already feel my brain buzzing with ideas for the next project. Let me know what you think and share your opinion about silver clay in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, it helps my art to reach more people, and consider subscribing so you don't miss my next creation. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and a huge thank you again to Craftsy for sponsoring this video. See you soon!